Okay, let's set the scene. You're running late, you hop in your truck, you turn that key, and just cranking. The engine turns over, but it absolutely refuses to fire up. If you own a 5.7 Vortec, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, today, we're going to get to the bottom of this no spark mystery. Yeah, it's that sinking feeling in your gut, isn't it? You can hear the starter doing its job, the engine is spinning strong, but there's just no ignition. It's just that repetitive, frustrating sound of an engine that's so close to starting, but just can't get there.
So, what's really going on here? Well, 9 times out of 10, you're looking at a no spark issue. It means exactly what it sounds like. That critical jolt of electricity needed to ignite the fuel in your cylinders, it's just not happening. And no spark means no bang, and no bang means no start. Simple as that.
So, our goal today is to tackle this like a real mechanic would. We're not just going to throw parts at it and hope for the best, because that gets expensive fast. Instead, we've got a roadmap. We'll talk about the right approach. We'll start with the absolute basics, then we'll check out the ignition's brains, see how the spark gets made, and wrap it all up with a clear diagnostic plan.
First things first, before we even think about touching a tool, let's talk about the single most important part of this whole thing, our strategy. I really want you to let this sink in. This is the golden rule that separates the pros from the part swappers. You gotta think like a detective, carefully eliminating suspects, not just buying a new part for every possibility. Follow a system, and you'll find the real problem, fix it once, and save yourself a ton of time and money.
All right, let's dive into our first checks. We're starting with the simple stuff, the low-hanging fruit. And you'd be amazed how often the fix is hiding right here, in these basic steps. So we're starting with the fundamentals, making sure we have power where we need it, checking for a solid ground, and confirming there's voltage getting to the ignition coil itself. Your engine's computer, the ECM, is literally the brain of the whole operation. And if that brain doesn't have power, nothing else is going to work, period. That's why step one always is to check those fuses, especially the ones for the ECM or ignition.
Okay, let's say the fuses are good and we've got power. Now it's time to investigate the ignition's command center, the sensors and modules that are responsible for telling the system when to fire the spark.
Think of the Ignition Control Module, or ICM, as the middle manager. It gets its orders from the big boss, the ECM, and its job is to turn around and tell the ignition coil exactly when to fire. It's a crucial link in the chain.
And here's why we're talking about it. The ICM is famous, or maybe infamous, for being a super common failure point on these 5.7 Vortec engines. It works hard, it gets hot, and when it decides to clock out for good, your spark is gone.
Now, what about the crankshaft position sensor? Well, if the ECM is the brain, the CKP sensor is its eyes. It's the only way the brain knows that the engine is actually turning over. If the ECM doesn't get that signal, it's not going to command a spark because it doesn't even know the engine is trying to start. Now, this is really important. A bad sensor can give you the exact same headaches as bad wiring to that sensor. No spark, stalling, intermittent starting, it's all the same. That's why you always check the connector and the wires for damage before you rush out and buy a new sensor. Okay, moving on, let's talk about creating the actual spark. We're heading over to the coil and distributor now. This is the hardware that does all the heavy lifting to make that high voltage zap. The ignition coil has one job, and it's a big one. It takes the 12 volts from your battery and transforms it into thousands of volts. A quick check with a multimeter right at the coil's connector will tell you if it's getting the power it needs. Because hey, if you've got no power going in, you're definitely not getting a spark coming out. And then there's the distributor. Its job is to be the delivery guy, sending that high voltage spark to the right cylinder at the perfect time. A tiny crack in the cap, a worn-out rotor, or a bad sensor inside. Any one of these things can stop that spark dead in its tracks. All right, we've identified all the usual suspects. Now that we know what we're looking for, let's put it all together into a clean, step-by-step game plan. Here it is. This is your cheat sheet for figuring out a no-spark problem. You just follow these steps in this order from the easiest checks to the more involved tests, and you're going to find your culprit without wasting time. See, when you follow a logical process like this, you're not guessing anymore. You're diagnosing like a professional. You'll find the actual problem, and you'll be able to fix it right the first time. So now that you see how all these parts work together and what can go wrong, think about this. What's one simple maintenance check you're going to make sure you do from now on to hopefully prevent this from ever happening again?